And welcome. Today we are talking with Andrew Seaton. Andrew has a book that he just wrote. I highly recommend the book, Spiritual Awakening Made Simple: How to See Through the Mist of the Mind to the Peace of the Here and Now. Awesome book. Andrew, welcome to the show. Could you take the time, introduce yourself, and let people know how you got where you are now in writing this book?
Oh, thanks, Ed. Thanks for the invitation to chat with you on your show. It's kind of interesting, actually. I've been thinking the last couple of days in anticipation of chatting with you about the title of your show, Dead America. And it kind of strikes me like I've been concerned most of my adult life with what seemed like, a relatively dead world. And so I can say a little bit about my background and how I came to write the book by making that connection. Since my late teens and leaving high school, going to college, I had a sense that there was something deeper to life than was obvious, and something deeper to me than I was able to kind of express in my life. And I went to college to study school teaching. I found the program very uninspiring, but I did read a little bit outside of my degree program, books I found in bookstores or the university bookshop and things like that. And I found some books that really did describe and reflect and really invite the reader to consider deeper aspects of life. One of those books, a couple of those books actually, were by Erich Fromm. He talks about the sane society. And he wrote another book called The Art of Loving. I found this really inspiring stuff. And it really confirmed for me that I wasn't kind of dreaming, that there is more if we just sort of dig a bit deeper. But actually, for several decades, I'm really talking for 4.5 decades, both in my personal life and in my working life, most of which was in the field of education. I had lots of other jobs, different times too, but most of it was in the field of education. In both those aspects of my life, I was doing this job of trying to dig deeper, what's really real, what's really true, and how do we access these kind of more precious aspects of being a human being and of experiencing life that people from time to time refer to, but they're not in the common everyday experience, and they're not in the common everyday conversation. So I was trying to, I looked into so many different, personal growth programs and philosophies, and in my work, I really dug deep into. Eventually, I started studying even deeper into the normal training to be a school teacher. And I looked at, well, what really is the nature of learning, and what's the nature of the knowledge that we seem to value so much and rely so much upon? What is really the nature of human intelligence? How does that operate? And I got caught up in so many traps along the way, Ed, so many claims to, this will help you, this will be fun, this will be satisfying. You've been there a bit, hey, yeah.
Of course, yes.
Well, and in a way, this was kind of the beginning of my spiritual awakening, it could be said. I want to just divert momentarily to talk about this word spiritual as I use it, because I use it not to suggest anything whatever to do with beliefs. I use it to suggest a subtler aspect of life that most of us sense from time to time, maybe somewhat dimly, but there's a subtler aspect to us than our bodies and our minds. And there's a subtler aspect to the life that we experience than just what we sense with our physical senses and what we think about with our conceptual mind. So this deeper aspect of awareness or presence or life, the essence of life, that's all that I'm referring to by using the word spiritual. And it's the essence of who we actually are. Got nothing to do with the conceptual mind or beliefs about this or that. Anyway, so what I was starting to say about how, in a way, along this long path of my life, the spiritual awakening, in a sense, has been happening because I just had this tendency to not be satisfied once I became aware of the limitations of a particular practice or a particular way of looking at things, or a particular program of personal growth, or a particular theory about life and the universe and everything. Once I sensed the limitations of it, I acknowledged the limitations of it, and sometimes I just let it go completely, that particular path or that particular activity, and then continued on looking rather than settling for, well, at least this is satisfying me in certain ways, and I'll just accept that it's maybe not completely right. If it wasn't completely right, I let it go, and I kept on looking. And in recent years, things have finally fallen into place. I've managed to extricate myself from so many traps along the way, and I've been able to see how it all comes together, and not just to see, certainly not just to see with my eyes, but also not just to see with my conceptual understanding, but to see with my, I suppose we could say, my inner sight. I'm not talking about ESP either. I'm just saying I began to feel and experience the deeper level of life. And one of the words I could use, I suppose, to describe that is this sense of peace that's in the background, that has previously been so much in the background, as now is so much more in the foreground of my life. This peaceful presence that is the background of all that I experience. So this is how I came to write the book, and I talk about in the preface of the book. For a couple of years before I wrote it, I was sort of feeling that I'd like to write something like this. Because I know that so many people are frustrated with their search to find, how do I find a contentedness in my life? How do I find, an undercurrent of peace? How do I get happy, and also because I had personally experienced, and I see so commonly, people getting caught in traps, conceptual traps, often just traps laid by the mind to say, this is where it's at, this is where it's at, this is where it's at. And I wanted to write a book to help to show people, don't fall for that crap. Don't just settle in the comfort of that trap. It's a trap. It's not satisfying. It's not fulfilling. It's not reality. It's not who you truly are, and it's not how you can truly experience life. So I spent a couple of years feeling, I'd like to write this book. I feel there's a book in there. I want to get it out. But I got various messages, and I talk in the preface also about how I had a lot of dreams, that was starting in 2018, a lot of dreams telling me about my own awakening and about how I was soon going to be helping a lot of other people with awakening. But when I tried to start writing this book in 2018, I just didn't, it didn't feel really kind of right, but I had the desire there. And one day I actually started, and I laid out some papers and put down a few ideas that could be different chapters, but nothing would flow. And so I just said, oh, well, okay, then, it's just obviously not the right time, And then it was about a year later that I again had something that popped up that prompted me to want to write the book. And this time, even though I had a few doubts, maybe it's still not the right time, maybe I'm not ready, there were messages and dreams that said, no, write it now. And so I did start writing it, and I was just so surprised with how the content really came to me and flowed into the book. And so I'm telling that little part of the story just to emphasize for your listeners that this book wasn't written primarily out of my conceptual mind. If you like, it wasn't written by the personality of Andrew Seaton. It was written by the more fullness of me that it was waking up in me, this more universal intelligence that is the essence of all of us, the awareness or consciousness that underlies our conscious mind and our bodies. This was flowing through me and expressing, giving me intuitive inspiration for the content of the book. I might stop there, Ed, and just see if you've got any questions you want to either throw in or comments.